Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely shift how you view William Shakespeare. We so often picture him as this distant, highbrow poet from centuries ago, but the truth beneath his work is actually much darker, much deeper, and honestly, incredibly relevant to how we operate today. It's like looking at a giant iceberg, and we are about to go way below the surface. Okay, let's dive right into this by asking a pretty simple question. Have you ever felt lonely? Or, be honest, have you ever been a gossip? These are words that are just so totally embedded in our daily lives that we never ever give them a second thought. But what's really fascinating is that Shakespeare actually invented or completely repurposed all of these everyday words. He took the adjective lone and turned it into lonely to describe that unhappy state of being alone. He took the noun gossip and casually turned it into an action verb. He literally just combined bed and room because, believe it or not, before him they were called bedchambers or sleep spaces, and he just slapped the prefix un onto dress to give us undress. The guy was constantly hacking the English language. So here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with shaping the English language, move into Jacobean Paranoia and witchcraft, look closely at Macbeth's weird sisters, tackle the racial ideology in Othello, and finish up with holding a mirror to society. Let's start with Section 1, Shaping the English Language, Building Modern English. So let's look at how he literally built the way we communicate today. He wasn't just a playwright, he was a full-on linguistic architect. Get this, he's credited with creating around 1,700 English words, mostly by combining existing ones, changing nouns to verbs, and adding prefixes. Before him, English rules were, well, pretty loose. But through his massive popularity, he actually helped standardize grammar and spelling. And if you look at all of British poetry, it's estimated that a whopping 75% of it is written in blank verse, which is a style he entirely mastered and popularized. But, the crucial point here is that we really have to look beneath the surface of his language. His true power wasn't just inventing words. It was how he used those exact words to capture the deeply rooted, frankly terrifying zeitgeist of his era. He perfectly documented society's deepest anxieties, basically acting as a mirror to a very turbulent world. Which brings us to Section 2, Jacobean Paranoia and Witchcraft, Obsession with the Occult. Now, to really understand this era, we first need to define what absolutely terrified them. During the late 16th and early 17th centuries, English society was thoroughly soaked in supernatural beliefs. Take familiars, for example. These were believed to be demonic creatures taking the form of small animals, like a dog, a rat, or a cat, used to do a witch's bidding. And we have to remember, this wasn't just fringe fiction for them. It was a deeply held, genuine, everyday societal fear. And this fear went literally all the way to the top. During the 1591 witch trials, a woman named Agnes Sampson was actually accused of christening a cat and throwing it into the sea, specifically to conjure a massive storm to destroy the ship King James I was sailing on. King James survived the storm, but he was so personally terrified of witchcraft after this event that he even went on to write a meticulous book about it called Demonology. And this brilliantly, tragically illustrates the era's massive double standard. Think about it. When men practiced the occult, they were called magicians or astrologers like John Dee, who literally worked for Queen Elizabeth. They were seen as scholarly and helpful to the political order. But when women were suspected of it, they were immediately labeled witches. They were viewed as subversive, dangerous anarchists who disrupted the domestic hierarchy and fundamentally threatened male authority. Let's move down the iceberg to Section 3, Macbeth's Weird Sisters, Paranoia on Stage. Shakespeare knew exactly what terrified his king and his audience, right? So he opens Macbeth with the weird sisters chanting fair is foul and foul is fair. They perfectly embody this historical dread, bringing chaos and completely blurring the lines between goodness and evil. Plus, they're accompanied by animal familiars like a cat and a toad, which directly mirrored the king's own very real fears. We can actually trace the exact steps of Macbeth's downfall here. First, he faces unjust frustration when King Duncan overlooks him for a promotion, even after Macbeth saved the kingdom in battle. Second, he yields to temptation. And third, he descends into rampant paranoia, murdering his friend Banquo and Macduff's innocent family. But notice the critical detail. The witches didn't cast a spell to control his mind. They merely spoke a prophecy. It was Macbeth's own internal greed and his own free will that chose to act upon it. So why does this matter? The true genius here is how Shakespeare fundamentally subverted the expectations of his own time. Jacobean society wanted to believe that witches forced good people to do evil things. It was a really convenient scapegoat. But Shakespeare used these supernatural fears not to blame magic, but to highlight the terrifying reality of human free will. The witches merely acted as a catalyst for the dark ambition Macbeth already had bubbling up inside him. We are now plunging even deeper. Section 4, Racial Ideology in Othello, Deep-Rooted Prejudice. To really grasp Othello, we have to look at the intense cultural anxieties of the time. Renaissance society was absolutely obsessed with maintaining their societal order and homogeneity. Miscegenation, which is the mixing of different racial groups, was deeply feared. The English associated fairness and whiteness with Englishness, and the mere idea of mixed marriages threatened to dilute their perceived supremacy and political power. Just to show you exactly how bizarre and xenophobic the cultural mindset was regarding outsiders, look at this shocking 16th century record from a chronicler named George Best. He literally described black skin as an infection that could overpower English whiteness. There were even royal proclamations at the time demanding the deportation of black individuals because they were bizarrely viewed as disorderly threats to the Christian white-dominated structure. So, let's compare the two main characters of Othello against this intense historical backdrop. Shakespeare brilliantly flips the era's racist expectations completely upside down. On one side, we have Othello, a noble, highly successful commander whose only crime in society's eyes is his race and his marriage. On the other side, we have Iago, a white European ensign who is driven entirely by immense masculine insecurity, professional jealousy, and bitter racist hatred. You see, Iago's villainy isn't some grand mystical evil. As he explicitly states, "I do suspect the lusty Moor hath leaped into my seat." His hatred is rooted in petty, insecure paranoia. He's furious that Othello promoted someone else over him, and he harbors this completely unfounded, paranoid suspicion that Othello slept with his wife. So he uses vile, animalistic, and racist language to tear Othello down and manipulate everyone around him. What's really fascinating here is how powerfully Shakespeare challenges his own audience. Renaissance England was utterly terrified of the supposed disorder that African outsiders would bring to their country. Yet, Shakespeare deliberately writes the play so that the white European Iago, the man who looks exactly like the audience watching the play, is the true source of monstrous, chaotic, and completely destructive villainy. The ultimate consequence of this is perfectly captured right at the end of the play. Even though Othello commits a terrible crime, the other characters, and really the play itself, firmly place the ultimate blame squarely on Iago. The character Lodovico looks at Iago and condemns him for his hatred, calling him a damned sleeve. Shakespeare uses this moment to force his society to deeply question the morality of an order that subsists on racially motivated hatred and xenophobia. Okay, let's bring everything we've learned back to the surface for our final takeaway. Section 5, Holding a Mirror to Society, Shakespeare's Endless Relevance. Because Shakespeare didn't just invent catchy phrases and words like bedroom or lonely just to entertain people. No, he used the stage to hold up a massive, unflinching mirror to the hypocrisies of the world around him. He showed us that evil doesn't necessarily come from spells and witches, but from our own unchecked ambitions. He showed us that monsters aren't always foreign outsiders. Sometimes, the most dangerous monsters are the deeply ingrained prejudices of our own society. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. If Shakespeare's 400-year-old words and phrases still perfectly define our daily lives and how we communicate, we really have to ask ourselves, how many of those 400-year-old fears, insecurities, and prejudices are we still carrying with us right now? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, because understanding our history is absolutely the best way to rewrite our future.